to the Occult podcast. This is a new podcast dedicated to exploring magic, mysticism, and Qabbalah, as well as other topics of interest. This is the third episode of a series exploring different concepts in relation to the Qabalistic tree of life from a Western esoteric perspective. I'm your host, Will, and I'll be guiding you on this journey through the different mysteries towards the light. I'm not an expert, and I'm not pretending to be, but I'm rather an eternal student, and this is a project for me to learn just as much as you. So please feel free to get involved, and it'd be great to have your feedback and ideas if there's anything that you like or disagree with. In today's episode, we will be exploring some of the symbolism and meaning behind the first Sephira at the edge of the three negative veils known as Keter, or the crown. Before we begin, I wanted to read part of the Emerald Tablet of Trismegistus to really sort of provide some inspiration for today's podcast. And it goes like this. Deep are the mysteries around thee, hidden the secrets of old. Search through the keys of my wisdom, surely ye shall find the way. The gateway to power is secret, but he who attains shall receive. Look to the light, O my brother. Open, and ye shall receive. Press on through the valley of darkness. Overcome the dweller of night. Keep ever thine eyes of the light plane, and thou shalt be one with the light. Man is in the process of changing to forms that are not of this world. Grows he as time to the formless, a plane on the cycle above. Know ye must become formless, before ye are with the light. List ye, O man, to my voice, telling of pathways to light, showing the way of attainment, when ye shall be one with the light. Search ye the mysteries of earth's heart, learn of the law that exists, holding the stars in their balance, by the force of the primordial mist. Seek ye the flame of this earth's life, bathe in the glare of its flame. Follow the three-cornered pathway until thou too art aflame. So that's, I just thought of quite a beautiful poem that I wanted to kind of talk through from the Emerald Tablet. So we'll go through some of the kind of basic correspondences of Keter. Obviously, the title is Kether, which means crown. It's at the very top of the tree, just below the three veils of existence. The name of God is Eheye, which means I am. The archangel is Metatron, or Prince of Countenances. The angelic hosts are the Chayach HaKadesh, or the holy living creatures. Apologies if my pronunciation is not the best on that. Astrological correspondences would be the Rashish Ha-Gilgalim, which is the beginnings or turnings of the primum mobile. From a tarot perspective, we'd be looking at the four aces of the pack. Elemental-wise, air is normally put here, although others have different ones. And the path text for this particular Sephira is the following. The first path is called the Admirable or Hidden Intelligence, for it is the light giving the power of comprehension of that first principle, which has no beginning, and it is the primal glory, for no created being can attain to its essence. The magical image for Keter is the outline of a human face looking towards the viewer's right and seen through brilliant light. You don't normally get any kind of details of gender or features. Other symbols that have been used to describe Keter would be the point and the crown. Additional titles are the macroprosopus, the greater countenance, Amen, the primordial point, the head which is not, and the colours wise, in Absolute we're looking at the pure brilliance. In Bria it is brilliant white. Yetzirah would be brilliant white, and then obviously in Zosiah is white flecked with gold. The correspondence in terms of the microcosm is the Yakida, which is the essential essence of the self. And in terms of where this is positioned in the body, we'd be looking at above the crown of the head. So it's actually, above our head rather than in our actual body. And that kind of gives you the main correspondences of this. Obviously, this is the highest Sephira on the Tree of Life, and so very much represents that aspirational place that's difficult to reach and difficult to understand from where we are. It sits at the top of the middle of the pillar of consciousness. So if you look at the three pillars that we talked about in a previous episode, this is at the top of the middle pillar. It's the number one, so it obviously contains all of the other Sephira in it. So this Sephira represents the completion of the great work, the kind of pure spirit of union with the divine or Samadhi. It was described by Pythagoras as being the undivided monad, as it cannot be divided or defined. So if we want to understand this, we can also look at it this way. So by a process of reflection, the monad defines and generates all other numbers. So Keter is the point, the moment in the universe when all things were conceived. This is the initial spark or breath from which all other things manifest. And it's described in the Zohar as the following: when the unknown of all unknown wished to manifest itself, it began by producing a point. For as long as that light point did not appear through its energy, the infinite was still completely unknown and did not spread any light. So what they're talking about here is the idea of Keter as being unknowable. And this is well represented by the title of the Sephira, which is the hidden intelligence, as well as the magical image attributed to the Sephira, which is the profile of a king. This is a really good representation of how, as humans, we can't really fully comprehend Keter. However, through different sort of spiritual, meditative and magical practices, we can begin to comprehend some of its powers. So it's similar to a king in that sense. So if we say, for instance, if we were a lowly farmer in a kingdom, we'd never be able to fully comprehend the power behind a king. However, you can see his works in the land around you. And likewise with Keter, this is also reflected in the title of Elion, which means supreme crown, which can be seen as both the really sort of the stirrings of the divine, but also a crown as a circular band. So if you think about the crown on a king's head, it is above the head and not part of it. And in the same way with Keter, the powers of the unmanifest flow, really through the crown into the wearer and so into the land around it. So this is essentially the source of all things and has all things contained within it. So it acts as a fountainhead from which all things flow. And this is described quite well, I thought, by Dion Fortune when she wrote the following: "Let us conceive Keter, then, as a fountain which fills its basin, and the overflow therefrom feeds another fountain, which in turn fills its basin and overflows. The unmanifest forever flows under pressure into Keter, and there comes a time when evolution has gone as far as it can in the extreme simplicity of the form of existence of the first manifest. All possible combinations have been formed, and they've undergone all possible permutations." And that's from the Mystical Qabalah, if anyone's interested. So, the king in Keter represents this kind of pure seed of light that descends down the tree from one form to another, but it's also an alchemical transformation. So this is the point that contains all that was and all that will be. And as Gareth Knight puts it, Keter is the primal glory, because no created being can attain to its essence. Were any created being to attain to its essence, which according to the spiritual experience is union with God, it would by that very fact become uncreate. Yet this is the goal of all in evolution, as the virtue of Keter reveals: attainment, completion of the great work, a term often met within magical and alchemical writings, is the great work of life itself, the death of free-moving spirit into form and its subsequent regeneration. And that's from A Practical Guide to Qabalistic Symbolism. If we move on to the god name, this actually is Eheya, which translates as I am, or I am that I become. And these are the words that, according to legend, that God spoke to Moses when he asked who is speaking to him through the burning bush. God is purported to have said Eheya Asher Eheya, which translate roughly as "I will be what I will be," and this kind of, I think, sum up some of the mystery and unknowable essence of this first Sephira. The word is made up of different Hebrew letters, so you've got Aleph, Hey, Yo, and Hey. We'll go into these in a bit more detail in the future. But if we look at it from their sort of main meanings, Aleph is the ox, so the beginnings. Hey is stabilization and also means a house. Yo would be the fertilization and the spark of the divine, and Hey is the final stabilization. So in this formula, we can actually see the act of creation, followed by stabilization and then a second phase of power. So this is constantly repeated when we look at the tree, and also is represented in the idea of the four worlds that we spoke about in the introduction. So we've got Absolute would be Aleph, Hey would be Bria, Yod, Yetzirah, and the final Hey would be Hazaya, material. So it's actually this full stage of creation expressed in this one name of God. In terms of the archangel, we'll move on to that now. So the archangel for this particular Sephira is Metatron, whose name comes from the Greek meta, which means behind, and tron, which meant throne. So he's also known as well as holding other titles, including keeper of the keys of wisdom, and also the watchman or the youth. And Mitratus in Hebrew as well, which means angel of the veil. There's many other legends surrounding Metatron. However, one of the most interesting ones that I found was the legend that he used to be Enoch before he became one with God. The story goes that Enoch, through his devotion, was consumed by fire and ascended both physically and spiritually into the divine essence of God, there to become the most powerful angel of all. And this is described as follows: the transformation of Enoch into Metatron was fierce. His flesh turned to flame, his bones to glowing coals. His eyes shone with starlight, and his eyeballs became fiery sparks. His entire being was a consuming fire. To his right flames danced, to his left torches gleamed, and all around him swelled gale and tornado, hurricane and thunder. After the transformation, Enoch, Metatron, is described as having 72 wings. So he had one for each of the 72 names of God. He had 365,000 eyes, and is transubstantiated from flesh into pure fire. And then he's also given a crown to wear, which is similar to God's, and put into a nice heavenly temple. So the other thing we can think about with Metatron in terms of this myth is because he's still a man and an angel. There is different spellings of his name to reflect both the human side and the angelic side. So obviously that's quite interesting from that point of view, that there are these two aspects to this mighty archangel. Other pieces that are interesting around Metatron, he's also the angel who is meant to have given the Qabalah to mankind, as well as to Enoch in terms of giving it back to the humans. Rabbi Isaiah Tishby wrote in his 3-volume Wisdom of the Zohar about this. The soul which is alone, the essence of man, according to the Zohar, is extracted from the pure radiance of the divine emanation. It is a divine spark that has been inserted into the physical body. The soul descends and assumes a physical form only in order to acquire a special perfection in the terrestrial world. At root, therefore, in his eternal spiritual essence, man is very near indeed to the divine realm, and his fall and contamination by sin are no more than manifestations of corruption and degeneration occasioned by his temporal physical existence. The unique man, Enoch, who was able to achieve the ideal, supernal perfection that was indeed predestined for the whole of mankind, but taken from them because of Adam's sin, purified himself of the material defects inherent in corporal existence and ascended to the highest levels of the angelic hierarchy. Enoch Metatron symbolises the culmination of the ascent for which man is destined to strive, and in this refined image, perfect man is superior to the angels. So this idea of the relationship between man and the angels can also be seen in the relationship between Metatron, the archangel of Keter, and also Sandalphon, who's the archangel of Earth. So according to the traditions, they obviously meant to be brothers who assumed human form at some point. And this also illustrates the closeness of Malkuth to Keter, and also the idea of Keter is Malkuth and Malkuth is in Keter. A way of understanding how different gods, goddesses, and Sephiras really operate in terms of psychology, and also how they work, and it can give you really good insight into the Sephiras if you can actually look into the different myths that are relative to it. In the case of Keter, there's a lot of different crossovers with obviously Chokhmah, which is the one we'll be talking about in the next episode from the kind of patriarchal king point of view. This is particularly in relation to the ideas of kingship. However, you must also remember that the nature of this initial Sephira is oneness and androgyny before separation, and also before the kind of polarity of the different sexes. So gods and goddesses that are usually associated with Keter are the creator gods and goddesses such as Gaia, Kronos, the great architect Brahma, however, lots of other ones. So it's worth having a look and thinking about some of the concepts we've been discussing. Keter is the primordial ocean, or the cosmic egg, or the chaos and force that exists before the universe came into the Big Bang. One of my favourites that for me resonates with Keter is the Egyptian deity Ptah, which is spelled Ptah, in case people didn't quite fully hear that. So he is actually considered as being a demiurge, and who in a sense existed before other things, and by his will thought the world into existence. It was first conceived in thought and realised by the word. So Ptah really conceives the world by the words of his thought, of his heart, and gives life through the magic of his word. Other gods from Egypt which are quite useful as well are Atum-Ra, who lived inside Nuit before anything was. So obviously Nuit being a representation of the unmanifest veils of existence. There is also a relevance in relation to Jupiter as the sky father, and also relevance in terms of Osiris as well. From an Arthurian perspective and the Grail mythology, which is something I'm very interested in, I also feel that Keter can be attributed to Saras. So for anyone who doesn't know, Saras is a mystical island in which the Holy Grail was brought to in Arthurian legend, and it's also where the Grail returns to once the Grail Knight Galahad, Percival and Bors achieve it. So here we can see Saras as being where the great spiritual insights and creation originates from, and also returns. So that gives you a bit of an idea about Keter. I hope that everyone's enjoyed this podcast. In the next episode, we will be talking about the next Sephira, which is Chokhmah. And in the meantime, I hope everyone has a good week, and speak to you soon. Thanks. Bye.